A vision becomes a milestone when it helps make our lives richer with love and laughter. When it helps make a cleaner, smarter, and a more beautiful planet. So that you can set off on joyous new journeys and adventures. Building stronger bonds and bridging impossible distances, which take you from the ever new to the forever beautiful. Opening up vistas and windows to a vibrant new world. A vision becomes a milestone when it touches millions of lives. Aditya Birla Group. Big in your life.
We made a promise to be at the forefront of development, to power growth across the country, to set an example for cleanliness and to create a land of opportunity. From bountiful reserves of minerals to steel that's strengthened by resolve, from untouched tribal cultures to undiscovered lands of old, we are many and we are one. We are Chhattisgarh.
We always wonder what lies beyond. What lies beyond conventions?
Hello, Blue Link. I'm feeling hot.
Blue Link, I'm feeling cold.
Beyond technology. Beyond innovations. Beyond mobility. Amazing things can happen when we go beyond. At Hyundai, we're going beyond mobility, and you're welcome to join us.
My parents. मेरे लिए ना कॉलेज चुना ना सब्जेक्ट्स, बट उनका प्लान था बहुत ही स्पेशल, जिससे बन गया मेरा फ्यूचर।
LIC का न्यू चिल्ड्रंस मनी बैक प्लान जो आपके बच्चों का फ्यूचर करे प्रोटेक्ट हर जरूरी मोड़ पर।
इट्स अ फ्यूचर बिल्डिंग प्लान।
Hi, Ma.
Luxury. In India, I discovered that true luxury isn't something you buy off a shelf. True luxury is a feeling that you are the Maharani of your world, and it can be all designed around you. All the beauty is yours. All the music is yours. India showed me that luxury doesn't follow designers and brands. True luxury follows its own heart.
Incredible India.
Hello and welcome to the 19th edition of the Hindustan Times Leadership Summit. For the last 18 years, the summit has been a much anticipated event where world leaders, thinkers, sporting champions, and stars have come together to be part of the summit's mission to enhance the level of discussion on issues facing India, the region, and the world. Last year, for the first time in its history, the summit was held virtually owing to the pandemic. Since the spread of COVID-19, the virus has changed not just the way summits are held, it has changed the way all of us work, the way we live, every aspect of our lives. This event as well, while we are in a better place vis-a-vis the virus, we continue to be cautious and will host the summit sessions virtually on this platform with only one session on the ground. Since we all know the world will never be the same again, we aim to bring to you conversations starting today until Saturday from global leaders and visionaries who will converge to ideate a blueprint for the new world order, the theme for this year's summit. 25 thought leaders are coming together on this forum to give us a clear picture of what lies ahead for India and the world. All through this week till Saturday, we bring you a stellar list of speakers, top ministers like Amit Shah and Nirmala Sitharaman, to chief ministers Uddhav Thackeray, Charanjit Singh Channi and Bhupesh Baghel, and speakers from the world of business, entertainment to sports, which brings me to our inaugural session with someone who's literally the greatest of all time, Usain Bolt. What can one say to introduce the Olympian who's completed a hat trick of 100 meters, 200 meters, Olympic sprint, double gold medal between 2008 and 2016, the holder of 8 Olympic and 11 World Championships, gold and world records in 100 meters and 200 meters. There was no track challenging enough and no competitor fast enough to match him. His story reflects an epic journey from small town Jamaica to record books of the world. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Ayaz Memon, who's moderating the session with Usain Bolt. Over to you, Ayaz.
Thank you, Sunitra. It's both a privilege and a pleasure to be speaking to Usain. You might not remember it, but in 2012, when he won the 100 meters gold, I was part of the press entourage sitting there to take an interview or hear him speak. And one of the things he mentioned there was how much he fancied playing cricket. He comes from Jamaica, which has a strong legacy, and also expressed a desire that, I could have played in the IPL. Well, Usain, we've got a mega auction coming up. We've got next season starting in April. We've got a mega auction coming up. We've got 2 more teams in the IPL. Do you want to throw in your hat in the ring and see if you're selected?
Definitely. I'll get my training on. I'll get fit and get ready.
Okay, on this session, we won't let you get away with under 10 seconds, which you're renowned for. All your medals have come in sprints, 10 or 20 seconds or lesser. But just to try and understand the person behind the legend, and obviously what made you such a formidable athlete, one of the greatest of all time ever in across disciplines. So just to get past this cricket and football thing, I was just doing reading about your childhood, and 12, 13, 14, you were a multidiscipline athlete in the sense that as a youngster, we all play many sports, but you were particularly fond of football and cricket. And what made you then switch to athletics and track and field at the cost of the others?
For me, it was all my cricket coach actually introduced me to track and field, because the 2 main sports in Jamaica at the time was actually football and cricket. And I was a massive fan of cricket because my dad was a fan. He watched it every day, every chance he get, he would watch all the teams play. So I grew up watching cricket, and I just had a love for football because the Reggae Boys were doing pretty well at that time. And my cricket coach saw me running in as a fast bowler and just decided, you know what, he's saying, I think you should try to run, you know what I mean? And I was like, okay, I'll try it, you know what I mean? And I tried and I did well. So I kind of just continued, but it took me a while to get away from cricket because it's something that I was really passionate about when I was young. So, yeah.
So we had Michael Holding, who gave up athletics to become a fast bowler, a fellow Jamaican like you. And you gave up cricket and football, so to speak, and became an athlete. That's great. I'm going to crisscross a bit between generations. So we are now, you're sitting in Miami, I believe. You're in Miami right now. I'm in Mumbai, Kunal and the Hindustan Times Leadership Gang, Sunitra, they're all in Delhi. We're living in an interconnected world, which is great, but we're going through some really tough times. It's almost an unreal world or a surreal world in this pandemic. How have you spent the last 20, 22 months? Because you were a man on the go, on the move all the time.
Well, at the start, I think I was just like everybody else. I was just at home. But I was kind of happy because I got to spend some time with my daughter at the time. I just got my daughter like 3 months into the pandemic, so I got a lot of time to spend and be a dad. You know what I mean? So for me, it was fun at the start, but then when you started seeing the impact on the world that he was having, then it kind of opened your eyes to let you know that this is going to be a long stretch of tough times for us. You know what I mean? And for me, it was rough on a lot of people because I could see it, social media and directly. You know what I mean? So, but I kind of just put my head down, tried to figure out different things to do. I started doing music also in the pandemic time. I did an album called Country Youths. I spent times with my friends, my family, and just tried to be tough and figure out ways to work in these tough times.
You know, I want to spend a little more. I'll ask you another question on this because in the last year, and especially during the Olympics, even before that, Naomi Osaka, then you had Simone Biles. You know, mental health has become a big issue in international sports, especially at the elite level, which actually runs, you know, counter to what most people imagined about elite athletes. That hey, I mean, such great athletes, why would they even suffer from mental health problems? But this doesn't. You know, what's your take? What's happening in the elite athlete world?
For me, I understand. You know what I mean? I've seen what they've been through. But I would say I went through the tough times when I was younger. And it wasn't as hard because social media wasn't as developed back then. I think social media plays such a big part on putting so much pressure on these young top elite athletes right now. So one thing when I was growing up and going through the ranks, one thing I stayed away from social media. I didn't read, even if I post a picture or something, I don't personally read the comments. You know what I mean? I think that's the problem. They read what the media is saying, if they had a bad day, if they're having a bad stretch of luck, you know what I mean? So I personally would tell them to stay away from social media. I got lucky because I was younger. I didn't have access to the social media on your phone, like one click and you could see everything. You know what I mean? But it was tough for me, but I got through by the support of my family and my friends being around me and showing me a lot of love.
So when you were active, I mean, and that's a long career you had, were the situations similar? I mean, social media, of course, is a new phenomenon, last 10, 15 years. But the pressures of expectation, the pressure of, you know, competing with fellow athletes.
Yeah, definitely. The pressure because I started so young, I won World Juniors when I was 15. So everybody was looking forward to me getting to the senior level and doing big things, you know what I mean? But after when I got to the senior level, it took me a while to get into competing with the big boys or training harder or figuring out what injuries were. So I kind of went through a slump where it was just hard times and figuring out how I can be better. And people were always criticizing me, saying, oh, he was just good as a junior, he's not going to make it as a senior. You know what I mean? And it was tough for me because my expectation was so high at a young age. So, but as I said, I figured out that, you know what, I want to do great for myself. I'm not going to let the world pressure me or anybody else pressure me. I want to do great for myself. So I'm going to focus on me and develop myself to being a better athlete.
You know, you're amongst the most successful athletes of all time across disciplines, as I mentioned earlier. You know, that brings in itself rewards like fame, money, adulation, recognition all over the world. But does it also get very lonely at the top? I mean, if you're right at the top, does it get very lonely?
For me, no. You know what I mean? I have my friends that I grew up with. You know what I mean? Most of my friends, I've known them for at least 15, 16 years. You know what I mean? So I kind of keep the same set of people, keep the people around me. And I understand that fame comes with pressure, but it also comes with benefits. So bad and good, and I'm just happy.
But that's a very, you know, Caribbean outlook on life, which, you know, I can tell you because I've been there a few times, and you know, there is work and there's the stress and all, and after that there's life that you have to lead.
Exactly, and that's how I look at it. You know what I mean? There's always going to be stress, even if you're not famous. You know what I mean? But you have to always just be true to yourself and just to live your life as best and as a role model, because we are role models. So that's how I look at it.
Just to kind of dwell a little bit on when you started, you was 15, 16, already an athlete of great potential. You had natural ability and you also had natural charm, the way you speak and you win over people and all that. But success at such a young age obviously puts a lot of pressure, the burden of expectation which you've talked about. Now, just to take it further from what you've already said, how should youngsters take or handle this pressure? There are so many athletes. Everybody wants to become an Usain Bolt if you're into track and field, or a Sachin Tendulkar if you're in cricket. But starting at that age, he was at 16, a world, playing at the highest level. You were competing at the highest level. The pressure part of it, how do you tackle? What is the advice you would give?
For me, I figured out at the start that I wanted this for myself. You know what I mean? I've said it earlier that I put myself first. When I started out, I was always worried about what everybody else would think. Like, oh, am I going to let my country down? Am I going to let my family down? You know what I mean? And I said, you know what? Am I going to let myself down? How can I not let myself down? How can I work hard and be true to myself to be great? And that's when I started not worrying about every single thing someone would say, because I wanted to be great for myself. You know what I mean? So I was focused on myself. And then I kind of got into having my family, finding persons who understood who I was as a person and was happy with me, you know what I mean? And wanted the same goal as I wanted, to be great. And that we went along the journey together, because my coach, Glenn Mills, I knew when at the start, Ricky Sims, which is my agent, at the start, my best friend, NJ, you know what I mean? My masseuse, all these guys were with me at the start before I start winning, because they had the same goal and they wanted the same thing for me. So you need to find the people that will help take the stress away from you, you know what I mean? So you can focus on just one thing and just working on being the best version of yourself.
So effectively, what you need is a very good support system around you when you're at that age.
Definitely.
Who was your inspiration? Who inspired you? I mean, the reason why I'm asking is because I watched the race of the century between Carl Lewis and Ben Johnson at the Seoul Olympics, and that's one of the most memorable events of my life. And just the sheer sight of these two runners running under 10 seconds was something that I'll never forget. But there must be something which triggered off this ambition, that I must become a sprinter.
For me, when I was so talented at a young age, you know what I mean? It was just all about running at the time. But I never forget when I went to 2007 was when I felt like was my first year in my senior level, where I was like, all right, I'm in good shape. I didn't get injured this season. I'm feeling good. And I remember running the hardest. Like, I was running hard. I was trying to beat. Back then, I only run 100 meters. And I tried to beat Tyson again. I came second at the World Championships. And I feel that was the moment when I went to coach and I was like, no, we need to figure this out. And he says, listen, if you do this, do that, you will be the best. And that's when I really turned my life around after that one race, because I felt like I was in good shape and I really wanted to win. So the fact that I didn't win, because I'm so competitive, I was like, you know what, I need to do more. And that's how I really got into it.
So Jamaica has always had a very strong tradition. In fact, the Caribbean islands, even TNT and some of the other Barbados, of very strong sprinters. But in the last 20 years or quarter of a century, there's been a turnaround in Jamaica. I mean, Jamaica has become the powerhouse of sprint champions now across genders, men and women. What is it in the water of Jamaica which is producing such great champions? I mean, Don Corey, I remember Ben Johnson was a Jamaican who settled in Canada. So there's always been a rich tradition. But the last 25 years has been phenomenal. What's been happening?
I really don't know. I think more people are focused on track. I think the kids now are more focused on track and field. Throughout the years, I've noticed a different trend. Like when I was growing up, everybody was watching the West Indies because in my era, it was Courtney Walsh and Curtly Ambrose, Brian Lara, and all these people. So in that era, everybody either wanted to play football or play cricket. That was the two sports that everybody, because that's what we saw as success, because all the athletes were doing that. So when we started doing track and field, it kind of grew so big because in the Olympics, in 2008, we dominated so big that now everybody started looking at track and field. All the kids started saying, oh, you know what? I want to be a Shelly-Ann Fraser. I want to be a Usain Bolt. So now more kids were focused on track and field. And at the Boys and Girls Champs in Jamaica, which all the schools across the country comes together and compete, and that's where you see the best talent, and that's where they come from.
So, you come across a very confident man, I mean, all through your running career. But what was your feeling when you first went to the Olympics? You're coming from a country which is small in population. It's parked somewhere in the Caribbean islands, lovely place, Jamaica, but not the US or China or one of these great, sporting countries in that sense.
Yeah. For me, when I'm in good shape, at a young age, I was really nervous. I think one story I need to tell to understand is that at the World Juniors, competing in Jamaica, the 200-meter finals, I was trying to put my shoe on, and I put the wrong shoe on the wrong foot because I could not focus. I was so nervous. I was nerve-wracking, and I won. And I remember telling myself that if I can win in front of my home crowd, where I was that nervous to the point where I was putting a wrong shoe on the wrong foot, then I can win in front of anybody else. You know what I mean? So that's one thing that helped me with the crowd and the stage fright. But being prepared. When I knew I was very prepared, I was always confident. I always walk proud, speak strong, because I knew I put in the work. I knew I did my best, so I was so confident.
What is the environment? What is the mood? What is the ambience in the Olympics or the World Championships when you're sitting with fellow, all of them fantastic athletes, Justin Gatlin, Asafa Powell, Usain Bolt, Johan Blake, each one wanting to win medal, glory, all under 10 seconds. Is the mood very somber? What is the mood like? You guys know each other. You are competing against each other for years. And yet, at the time of the big race, what's the mood?
I think at the time, everybody's kind of in their own zone. You know what I mean? Most of us are friends, or we conversate. But the moment we get to the warm-up track, then it's kind of like, all right, good luck, and then we go our separate ways. You know what I mean? But I don't think it's as intense as it was back in the days. You know what I mean? Because I watched those races on YouTube. The level of intensity, it's always crazy to watch. But nowadays, it's not as bad. People still get nervous, but it's all about just focusing and trying to get the job done.
I know this is a stereotype, but are sprinters actually brooders? You've been a very different kind of a persona or personality. But when I remember Ben Johnson or even Carl Lewis, they used to be fairly glum. You were very outgoing. Yeah. And Johan Blake, who I've seen at the Olympics, but not some of the others.
I think it's just my personality. You know what I mean? Throughout my life is something that I've always done. If you watch all my races that I've won, I've always just performed and just shown my personality to let people know who I am. And I think that's one of the main reasons that people love me, because it wasn't just all about running. I was trying to entertain. So I think that's one thing that people enjoyed and love. And it's just who I am as a person. I just like to laugh and have a good vibe and have a good time.
But your body language was very strong and you were very engaging. And was that also a way to intimidate the rivals? You know,
No,
of them before the race.
It was just. I think it was. I'm just a nice person. You know what I mean? I'm genuinely just a nice person. So for me, I'm always smiling and talking to people and stuff. I try to avoid even talking to the athletes because people have made that point to me already when I was running that, oh, is this your way of intimidating people? I was like, it's really not. I'm just a nice person. So if you're going to have a conversation with me, I'm going to have a conversation with you. You know what I mean? I'll engage. If we're friends and I know you, I'll engage you and talk to you. But I figured out at the end, not really at the end, maybe the middle, that a lot of times these athletes might feel like I'm intimidating them. So I kind of stopped.
Do you have any fear? I mean, not necessarily about running, but is there any fear in life? And if so, what would that be? Do you fear ghosts? Or
yeah, definitely. My biggest fear right now is being a father. You know what I mean? Because the little things now, I'm in charge of 3 little kids. You know what I mean? So I do not want to fail at that. I think that's one of the biggest things. You know what I mean? I've been talking to a lot of my friends because most of my friends have older kids. I've been having conversations, you know what I mean? So I think that's one of my biggest fears right now is to fail as a dad.
Yeah, that's a universal fear. I still fear that. But your toughest rival, if you have to pick one? Not easy. There have been some great athletes, some great runners.
Justin Gatlin for me was my toughest rival. I think because mentally he was always there. He's always ready to go. And he has proven himself to be a championship person. I think he was one of my toughest rivals that I ever had. And I really enjoyed it. It was fun.
For the benefit of a lot of young athletes who will see this and read about this, young sprinters. So just give an idea of what your daily training regimen used to be when you were active, and especially in season, off season and in season when you were competing.
So for me, a training day would look like I get up in the morning. At times I'll do abs, a little bit of abs if I'm in the mood. And then I'll go to the gym. We work out for an hour and a half, depends on the program that my coach gives me. You go home, get some lunch, get some rest. Then we'll have the training program. In the off season, the training program is longer because there's a lot more running involved. So you go up to 3 hours, 3.5. Depends again on depends on what the coach gives us. In season, it's a lot more shorter because I'm a sprinter, so we do quicker stuff, less volume and stuff like that. So you go maybe 2 hours, 2.5. You know what I mean? Depends on how long the coach wants the session to be. Then I'll go home, and then I'll have 1 hour with my masseuse, where we do extra work, where I do strengthen my hamstring, my calf, my back, and I'll do some more abs and stuff. So that will be a complete day.
What are some pitfalls that young athletes, budding athletes should avoid, apart from not trying to overeat or overstress themselves? Are there some pitfalls that you can, recommend that they should
always take time to rest. When your body tells you it's tired, take time, take a day or two to rest, to recover. Because some athletes push themselves and then they get injured because they don't listen to their body when they're tired. And also get a lot of rest. Night rest is important. To get 8 hours night rest is very important. Sleeping in the day it doesn't make up for night sleeping. Stay hydrated throughout the day, Gatorade, water and stuff. What else? Work hard at your craft, you know what I mean? Do research. Don't just do it and just listen to your coach. If you do interview, listen to interviews, you know what I mean? Ask questions, which is always important because that's how you perfect your craft. That's one thing I always do with my coach is that when he says I should change something, I would ask why. Not because I was questioning, because I wanted to understand fully why I was going to do this. So those are a few things that they can really do or to watch out for.
And when you're at an event like the Olympics or the World Championships, so what is in the world of sport, different regimens are prescribed for different kinds of athletes. Some of the greatest, for instance, Muhammad Ali, the greatest boxer that the world has seen, his coach and his camp would tell him 2 months before about this is what you will eat, this is what you'll do, and no sex. For Pele, it would be something else. For cricketers, it may be something else. For athletes, for track and field sprinters,
I don't think we have a stress as regiment as that, but we all for a month before that's when we start tapering down for like sharpening up our skills, you know what I mean? You definitely have to watch what you consume at that time because you don't want to put on any extra weight, you know what I mean, or lose your muscle at that time. So, but it's simple. We just, because our race is so quick, we'll get a lot of rest. Like a week, you make sure you train, but you don't train as intense, you know what I mean, because you want your body to be rested and fresh for that one moment.
How did you take success? At different stages, when you were 16, 17, obviously it meant something else. Then when you were 20, 21, and now then when you were 30. So, coping with success is also a huge pressure. It's not just about pressure of expectation and failure. When you're Usain Bolt or, of that stature, just coping with success itself can be very demanding.
Yeah. For me at the start, it was just a self-shock because as a 15-year-old being famous in this country, everyone knows who he is, was kind of a self-shock to me. It was just weird for people coming up to me, asking for pictures, asking for autograph, you know what I mean? And the older I got, I figured out that I have a responsibility now as a person that people look up to be a great role model and to set an example for the younger kids coming up. And throughout that, I feel like I've carried that along through my life now, that I can understand and figure out how to help people and also to benefit so I can build a good life for myself and my kids.
Is there something which you feel today was a little embarrassing or a little funny and maybe you couldn't have done or you shouldn't have done that, or something that you regret?
Not really. I was always grown up a certain way by my parents, to be nice or to have respect for everyone. The only thing I would say is that at times I tend to try to disguise myself in public, but it's hard, but I tend to do that. So that's the only thing I would say, you know what I mean? I try to hide crowds or stay away from crowds. Like I'll be walking down the street, I might see too much people and I'll turn to go the other way, you know, and to walk around the crowd. So that's stuff like that I'll do.
Do you still follow, I'm sure you do, but I'm just asking it nevertheless, do you still follow the world of athletics very diligently? You're keeping a track on what runners are doing or other athletes?
Not as much, you know what I mean? I do still watch a few of the races and try to keep adverse of who is doing what and who is doing well and who's running fast. So I'll definitely see that. But because I'm so busy at times, I do not get to see the race live. But when the pandemic calms down, I'm definitely going to go to all these meets and just to be there, to take in the atmosphere, because I've never had the opportunity to actually go into the stadium and just watch.
what is it that is keeps you engaged now? I mean, we've had this pandemic, lockdown, everybody's lives have changed. What is it that keeps you engaged and keeps you focused? I'm not talking motivated. There may be a lot of things that motivate you, but what is your time spent most on, apart from the kids?
I still do a lot of work with my sponsors, like Hublot and all these guys. I do still do a lot of work with them. I play a lot of dominoes. If anybody follows me knows that I play a lot of dominoes. I'll just hang out with my friends, and I'll play some video games also. So those are the things that I do in my spare time if I'm not with the kids.
I want to talk about the world of sports at large, and especially in the field of the Olympic field. Now, doping remains it's a malignancy, and what can be done to address this? This is something which has been going on I mentioned about seeing Carl Lewis and Ben Johnson race in 1988. Ben Johnson wins the gold medal, and the next day it's taken away from him because he's tested positive. And the story has not kind of ended. It's gone into various other areas. It's the masking of doping which is really the issue. So what's your overview of what it is and what can be done?
Listen, as you said, we have tried everything in sports, to eliminate doping, but I just think you have to continue to put it in more strict regulations to try to figure out how to deter people from wanting to cheat. I've always said that the sports body makes the rule, but if you start banning people immediately at times from the sports, if you're caught doing something illegal, then I think that would deter people from actually trying, But I try to live respectful. As I said, I understood what it meant to show the world that it could be done, So younger kids can look up to me and say, listen, Usain did all these great things without taking drugs. It's just about hard work and dedicating yourself. And I look at it as a lot of people want to take the short road, never want to take the short road, always want to be the best version of yourself. So young athletes, listen, it's all about dedication and applying yourself. It won't happen overnight. You have to really work hard and be dedicated.
So something like this keeps dogging all the elite athletes, and that especially in wrestling or boxing and certainly athletics. Did it ever bother you? Because there's always this accompanying skepticism, and then nothing, I know that you have always said, I'm open for any test, anybody can do whatever they want, and that's fine by me. But does that tell on the pressure? Does it add to the pressure?
It's not a pressure. It's just for me, it's always been like annoying more than anything else. I understand why, but it's more annoying to me because when you're comfortable in your skin, it doesn't really matter. I was comfortable. I wasn't worried at all. It was just always when people would question what you have done. That was the only annoying thing about it. But otherwise, I knew who I was as a person, and I knew the work that I put in to get where I'm at, so I was okay.
One of the other issues, we talked about mental health, but one of the other issues which has become really huge in international sport is Black Lives Matter. Your fellow Jamaican, Michael Holding, has written a book, Why We Kneel, How We Rise, recently, about racism in sport. It started from the US, as we know, and then it's become a global phenomenon. Everywhere people are acknowledging it and trying to address it. Any experiences that have you ever been subjected to racism?
Yeah, I think definitely yes. It hasn't been anything massive for me. I've always just tried to ignore the smaller ones. But I've been in situations where people have approached me, and I know it's because of the skin of the color of my skin. But I've always just tried to live positive and move past it. But as you said, in America, it has really gotten so much bigger that now everybody is speaking out and telling their story about what they've been through, and it's a problem. And I think we have to speak out on it and really try our best to really let everyone be aware and let them know how we feel as a people. You know what I mean? So hopefully in the future we can all come together and be a better world.
On a broader level, do you think, or do you think that sports persons should be involved in this kind of activism? There are two schools of thought, or the politics of it. Some say we are sports persons, and that's what we are limited to. The others feel no, we should be involved.
I think sports is the biggest thing around the world, no matter what anyone says. You know what I mean? Sports has a massive impact on everyone. You know what I mean? So I definitely think we should be involved or speak out, because we have a big voice as sports people, because sports never stops. It continues to go 24/7, not just across the football and cricket and track and field, but there's so much other sports in the world that could make an impact if we all speak out.
So I'm coming towards the end of our session. So I want to know, what does Usain Bolt do to chill and be away from the gaze of people? I mean, there is an Usain Bolt we know who loves the limelight, the spotlight. You revel in it, you enjoy it. But there must be a private Usain Bolt somewhere.
For me, if you follow my career throughout my life, you know that I enjoy partying, going out, having a drink. You know what I mean? But as I said earlier, I love playing dominoes. That's, if I could play dominoes every day, I would play dominoes every day. You know what I mean? I play video games. I just chill. I'm a chill person, so I'll stay at home, sleep. I'll binge watch a few shows. So yeah, that's how I live on my relaxed days.
And how's your good buddy, Mr. Universe Boss, doing, Chris Gale?
He's good. We actually met up. We were in Dubai together the other day.
Yes.
And we hanged out for a while and chit chat. And he was telling me he was going to a cricket tournament. I think I don't remember where it was, but he was going to another cricket tournament. So yeah, he's good though.
He's been all over the globe, and just bringing in the fans. Not playing for the West Indies now; he's retired from West Indies cricket. But just to dwell a little more briefly on cricket, as I mentioned earlier, the IPL is coming in an extended version now. I was being facetious about whether you want to play or not. But what were your skills? Batting, bowling?
I was actually good at both. I was actually good at both. Yeah, I was all around. I was proper good at batting, you know what I mean, and bowling. I was consistent, you know what I mean, in batting and doing well. But I think bowling was mostly my strength. I was really good at bowling. And I remember after a couple of years, after I stopped, I went back and tried to bat. Listen, it's all about practice. Because I could still bowl. I still had majority of my skill bowling, but batting-wise, it was all gone.
So I've got a series of questions. You have to give me one-line or one-word answers. And so, yeah, I mean, T20 or Test cricket?
T20.
T20. Stocks or cryptocurrency?
Stocks.
Tendulkar or Lara?
I have to go with Lara as my people.
Okay, this is another tough one. Ronaldo or Messi?
No, Ronaldo for sure.
Ronaldo for sure.
I'm a massive fan.
Reggae or hip hop?
Reggae music. And this is the really easy one for you. It should be. The greatest Olympian of all time, Michael Phelps or Usain Bolt? Amongst men. I'm not including let me think about it. Usain Bolt.
Well, since you said Usain Bolt, we can't let you go without your trademark gesture, which is, yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for being with us, Usain. I think you've taken everything unflinchingly, all the questions that I've heard at you. It's been wonderful having you on this panel, and I'm sure that the audience there would have, there's a lot of messages that you send, especially to young and budding athletes and also to elite athletes, which should be of great value to them. Thank you so much once again. Over to you, Smith.
Thank you very much.
A vision becomes a milestone when it helps make our lives richer with love and laughter. When it helps make a cleaner, smarter, and the more beautiful planet. So that you can set off on joyous new journeys and adventures. Building stronger bonds and bridging impossible distances, which take you from the ever new to the forever beautiful. Opening up vistas and windows to a vibrant new world. A vision becomes a milestone when it touches millions of lives. Aditya Birla Group. Big in your life.
We made a promise to be at the forefront of development, to power growth across the country, to set an example for cleanliness and create a land of opportunity. From bountiful reserves of minerals to steel that's strengthened by resolve, from untouched tribal cultures to undiscovered lands of old, we are many and we are one. We are Chhattisgarh.
We always wonder what lies beyond. What lies beyond conventions?
Hello, Blue Link. I'm feeling hot.
Blue Link, I'm feeling cold.
Beyond technology? Beyond innovations? Beyond mobility? Amazing things can happen when we go beyond. At Hyundai, we're going beyond mobility, and you're welcome to join us.
माई पेरेंट्स मेरे लिए ना कॉलेज चुना ना सब्जेक्ट्स, बट उनका प्लान था बहुत ही स्पेशल, जिससे बन गया मेरा फ्यूचर।
LIC का न्यू चिल्ड्रंस मनी बैक प्लान जो आपके बच्चों का फ्यूचर करे प्रोटेक्ट हर जरूरी मोड़ पर।
इट्स अ फ्यूचर बिल्डिंग प्लान।
Hi, Ma.
Luxury. In India, I discovered that true luxury isn't something you buy off a shelf. True luxury is a feeling that you are the Maharani of your world, and it can be all designed around you. All the beauty is yours. All the music is yours. India showed me that luxury doesn't follow designers and brands. True luxury follows its own heart.
Incredible India.
Welcome back. It may be tough to follow up the fastest man on earth, but we have someone who's arguably one of the newsiest as our next speaker. Architect Bimal Patel has handled some of the most prestigious projects of redevelopment in the country, including the current Central Vista project. It's a project that's changing Delhi's landscape, and because of that, it's become an emotive issue, with some people ruing the loss of historical sites, others welcoming the prospect of a modern city. Before that project got over, Bimal Patel has also been roped in for the Sabarmati Ashram redevelopment in Gujarat, and that's also become a big headline. Why are these projects necessary, and is the criticism valid when we talk about these projects? To talk about it all, Bimal Patel is in conversation with HT's editor-in-chief, Sukumar Raghunathan. Sukumar, it's over to you.
Thank you, Sunitra, and Bimal, pleasure to see you again. Thank you for doing this. I drive by Central Vista every morning, and so I'm going to start with the newsiest question for people in Delhi. Is the handover to PWD for Republic Day preparations, is it done? Is it going to be done shortly?
Yes, of course. It's the Republic Day parade will take place there, and the handover is being done in bits and pieces, and it will be done. So that's not the big issue.
Excellent. I want to start with a slightly macro question. How do you approach the redevelopment of something as historic as, in this case, of course, it's Central Vista, but you're also involved in the Sabarmati Ashram project, which again has created a fair bit of headlines. How do you approach philosophically at a macro level the redevelopment of a historically important location?
Well, in one word, if you ask me, approach it respectfully. There's simply no question about it. It has to be a respectful approach. However, the factor that it's a historically important site and that it should be treated respectfully, I believe, should not paralyze us. We must do what is necessary to transform these places so that they function for us as well today. That said, the next issue is to start identifying the problems with the way they are functioning right now and find out how those problems can be solved. So if one takes a simple approach like that, I think one comes up with solutions that make sense today, but with a lot of respect for the history and the ethos of the place. So I believe that that's the right way to go about it.
So let's drill down to the functionality and let's get down to the specifics. So if you look at the redevelopment of Parliament, the whole Central Vista project, which is the Parliament building, the Central Secretariat, which are all the government buildings, the public spaces, the residences for the Prime Minister and the Vice President, and of course the relocation of the National Museum, which is the entire Central Vista project. What were the functional challenges?
Well, I think they're pretty straightforward. The people using Parliament have been requesting that the difficulties they face in using Parliament be addressed. They've been requesting that since a long period now. Formally, the first request, I believe, was in 2012. The place is stressed. It was never meant to be Parliament. It was meant to be a council house. Once we took it over, it was, in a hall that was meant to seat 150 people, we put in 543 people. That itself brings its own stress. All the modern infrastructure has damaged the building. The installation of modern infrastructure has damaged the building in many parts. So the Parliament, you have to ask parliamentarians and people who use the building, they will tell you that the building, all their problems need to be addressed. In this case, so those were the functional issues that needed to be addressed. If you look at, and I'm not going to run through the whole list, but if you look at the public space between Rashtrapati Bhavan and India Gate, which is the, Delhi's public space, it's the most important public space, and it's an icon for our country. That space has simple problems like it lacked toilets. You cannot have a 3-kilometer long garden and have one toilet at one end. So it lacked lighting, for example. So that made a lot of it inaccessible and unsafe. The water bodies that were beautiful, marvelous old water bodies, they were leaking and there was no water that could be held there. So I'm not going to run through a list. There's a whole laundry list of problems that all the different projects are solving. And they're doing it with two things absolutely squarely in mind. On one side, we want to respect the heritage of that place. The heritage buildings and the basic structure of the space is being completely kept as it is. Second, we want to respect the fact that this is prime public space. So if anything, we want to increase public space and its usability. We don't want to diminish that. So that said, I think it answers what you were asking.
Sunetra, in her introduction, spoke about the fact that this has become an emotive issue. I think the fact is everyone has pretty much grown up seeing the circular parliament building, and to suddenly be told that there'll be a new parliament building is a bit of jolt to many people. The same with the ashram, right? There's certain associations that people have with the ashram. It's always been a certain way. And the first reaction that people have when they hear that it is going to be redeveloped or refurbished or improved in any way is a complete lack of trust. So how do you solve this problem? I'm sure you've encountered this several times.
I completely agree with you, and I think that the apprehensions that people have when they hear redevelopment, when they hear change, these apprehensions are often well-founded, and I don't have a quarrel with that. So much of the change that we see all around us is actually deleterious. It reduces quality and takes away old memories, and it's problematic. And so I understand where this is coming from. But I would say that one must also, besides being emotive, look at the facts and look at what is being proposed without just disregarding the facts and giving way only to emotions. So that's the thing. And so once you take account of how things are being done, I've found that, at least in my projects, whenever I've explained them to people, when I've taken people to see what we are doing or shown them presentations, I've found that most people say, well, it adds up. It's not such a big problem. And I think it's because the approach is one that is respectful of history and mindful of what is needed for the present.
Let's drill down to some of the specific problems that people have raised with the Central Vista project. The museum, everyone's spoken about the National Museum and the fact that, it's being moved. What is your view on this?
Well, I'm actually quite, Yes, I can understand why people are worried about when they say, listen, when the National Museum is moved, will the artifacts be taken care of when they are moved properly? Will be done rightly? I can understand these apprehensions, and these are legitimate questions that need to be answered. But the move by itself, the fact that the that the bastions of government, that the buildings that Lutyens and Baker built for the Raj to signify the power of the Raj over the Indian population. If these buildings are becoming museums that you and I can walk in with our children and grandchildren and whatever, then I think this is an extremely fantastic move. It's about time that our republic abandoned those symbols of the Raj and turn them over to the people, and that's what's happening. I believe that's often disregarded when people worry about how the move is going to happen and whether the artifacts will be carefully dealt with or not. Those are legitimate questions, but I think the move by itself is very, very progressive. It's a deepening of our spirit of our republic, I think symbolically at least, and it's a recasting of the iconography of that place without really changing anything. So I'm quite hopeful about that, and I believe it's a progressive and good move.
One of the other criticisms, and I've got a list of issues that people have raised at various points in time, is the jamun trees, right? and the relocation of the trees, and the fact that some of the trees are being removed.
So I've taken a lot of people to the site to show the sample that has been done there. And often they come and ask me, so which trees have been removed? And, I jokingly tell them that they were all removed and now they've been brought back. Because really, this is a bit of information that has no, at least not the kind of factual basis that is made out. You see, there are, in Lutyen's time, there were 453 or 460 odd jamun trees planted there. He intended this garden not to be a garden, but to be a processional route. And so he was not worried about providing shade. Over a period of time, we've added lots of new jamun trees. And so presently there are approximately 1,200 jamun trees on the two sides of Rajpath, out of which approximately 20 or 21 are being removed or transplanted, let us say, to build toilets. There was no better way of doing it, and this was very thoughtfully done. So 21 out of 1,200 thoughtfully transplanted, I think, is a reasonable sacrifice. So that's the fact of the matter, not what people often fear, which is that somehow we are going to get rid of all the 1,200 trees. This is not what's happening, or that we are going to replant them or something. So this is where we are.
Is the project on track in terms of time?
Yes, it is on track. It's on time. There are lots of challenges that we are facing. We'll continue to face as we go ahead. And hopefully, up to now, it's on track. Hopefully, there will be no other major challenges, and it will remain on track as we go ahead.
Which means 75th year of independence, 2022, we will have a new parliament building.
By the end of 2022, before the winter session, that's what is planned, yes.
Let's move on to the more intangible association that people have with a lot of heritage buildings. And I want to speak about the Sabarmati Ashram. I mean, there is a certain, depending on how you would call it, I was going to use the word run down or worn down, but I know that might not be a respectable word, but there was a certain simplicity and a certain basic quality to the ashram when you look at it. And I think a lot of people liked that kind of sentiment pervading the place. And there is a worry that you're now going to end up with something which is frankly modern and doesn't really reflect the principles on which the father of the nation founded that ashram?
So let's get 2 or 3 facts correct here. First of all, like you and like many other people, I admire the Spartan, austere, authentic, simple qualities of the original Gandhi Ashram. If one goes there today, goes to Gandhi Kutir or to Mirabai Kutir or the buildings around there, they have been well preserved in that manner by the Sabarmati Ashram Preservation and Memorial Trust, and there is absolutely no intention to deviate from that. What is being done? Let me explain, and then come to one other point. The Gandhi Ashram used to occupy about 40 acres of land. On it, there were 60 odd or little more than 60 buildings that were spread out across that 40 acres of land. The Gandhi Ashram we see today is only 5 acres. Out of that, only 3 acres, the old buildings have been preserved as they used to be, and they are available for visitors to see. The idea of the project is to expand the Gandhi Ashram to cover all the original buildings, and the original buildings, most of which exist today but are in a derelict state, are to be restored and brought back to their original condition. So this is a restoration project. This is Gandhi Ashram restoration, not Gandhi Ashram redevelopment. That's point number 1 that must be understood. And there is absolutely no intention on any side to do things that go counter to the ethos of the ashram and the architectural language, simplicity, authenticity of the place. So there is, I'd urge you to look at the short video film or short animation film that was released by Government of Gujarat that shows some visuals of what is proposed. If you can find something that is non-Gandhian there, let me know. Having said that, let me also remind people who talk about modernism as completely always opposed to something that is Gandhian simplicity. Because Charles Corrier's famous museum there, which is there and nothing's to be done to it, remember that it did not mimic Gandhi Ashram. What it did was use perfectly modern materials like brick and concrete to build a modern building that had the ethos of Gandhi Ashram. Now, this can be done. So my point is very simple. Let's not oppose modernism to simplicity, authenticity, and sort of austere character, architectural character. Modern can be all of that. I'm not saying we're going to do that. We're only going to restore the old buildings, and in that they have to be exactly like they used to be earlier. And the way that Gandhi Kutir is just now, what it was earlier. So I'd urge people to actually see the visuals. They have been put out by the government of Gujarat, and then make up their minds about whether this Gandhi Ashram project is a threat to Gandhiji's legacy, or something that is going to make it available for future generations. Today, those buildings are falling apart and decaying, and now they will be brought back, restored and brought back so that people can go there, visit a 50-acre ashram in the condition that it was when Gandhiji used to live there. So that's the idea. I hope that clarifies.
When you look at many of the projects that you've been involved with, as well as projects that you're currently working on, in many ways these are new history, right? I mean, maybe you're creating buildings that need to stand the test of time. I know this is a slightly tough thing to ask you to do, but how do you think history will judge your work?
Gosh, I cannot ever say, nobody can say what the future will hold for all of us. I just hope that we are doing things, the honesty, simplicity, sincerity, and respect that we are showing for the past, the honesty with which, sincerity with which we are trying to solve problems is something that will be respected as time goes by, and it'll be clear that we are not out here trying to rewrite history. We're just doing what needs to be done. In a sense, it's not we are not trying to be bombastic about this. We're just solving problems, and that's what Lachins was doing. That's what Gandhiji was doing when he built. People were solving their problems in a humble sort of way, and I hope we are doing that. We are not trying to create history, and I'm hoping that will win us the hearts in future.
You know, because the projects you're working on are so significant, you've attracted a lot of attention, a lot of criticism. People have commented on your architectural style. I think someone called it brutalist, and there have been various comparisons with architects through the ages. What goes on in Bimal Patel's mind? What are your architectural influences? What are your how do you approach this? Can you sort of give us a window into how you think and how you approach architecture?
Let me put it this way. I view each problem afresh. I do not have a personal style that I go around stamping everywhere. When I work on the new campus for the Indian Institute of Management, that had Louis Kahn's building, and that was an opportunity to make a building that was thoroughly modernist, thoroughly modernist in the way that it didn't mimic Louis Kahn. There's no point in mimicking stuff, but it was thoroughly modernist. The setting was that it was the right thing to do. I'm doing some work in Kashi just now, and the temple, and if you look at the parisar around the temple, the sort of arcade around the temple that creates the sacred space within, I collaborated with a temple architect to make a perfectly traditional structure. These are two extremes, and so I am. I don't believe I take a stamp and it's Bimal Patel everywhere. People who are sometimes worried that I will take one style from somewhere and put it here get worried about what I'm going to do. So that's my approach. I do what I feel is appropriate for that place and for that moment and for that particular context. So that's what I'm doing. I do that quite sincerely. And yes, I do attract criticism because these projects are projects that are significant. They are in the public eye. I have in the past attracted criticism. So I understand this, and I've learned how to deal with it also.
How do you deal with it?
You try not to let that affect you too much, and you focus on the problem that is to be done. You have to learn how to in a sense, not let that get to you, and be straightforward and honest and focus on the job that needs to be done. One develops an ability to do that.
A lot of your projects are for the state. How easy is it to work with the government?
This is incriminate. I mean, this is a question that can get me into a lot of trouble. So perhaps I should dodge it and say that, listen, let me put it this way. All jobs are difficult to do. Okay. Each architect has to decide which frustrations he wants to live with. And so sometimes if you work for private clients, that's difficult too. If you're building a single family home for somebody, that's difficult too. But these are all different frustrations. You work for government is difficult too. You got to decide which frustration you want based on what type of work you want to do. So I'm not going to answer that beyond that.
If someone were to ask you to show them one or two or three pieces of your work that best symbolized your approach to architecture? What would you ask them to look at? Which works of yours do you think showcase your thinking the best?
Well, as I said, don't look at it stylistically. It's not that I take a style and apply it everywhere. If you want, if I had to show something of small scale, I would show my own home, where I feel it's problem solving done. The language is modern. It's not a traditional vocabulary of architecture. If I had to show an institutional building, I'd probably take the new campus that we are doing. I mean, the addition to the new campus that we are doing for IIM right now. I'm quite proud of that, and that is pretty good. If you take a planning job, I would say the liberalization in urban planning that we achieved in the 2000 urban plan for Ahmedabad is sterling. If you'd say something that is a public space project, I think the riverfront in Ahmedabad is an important achievement for this. So there are various projects of different scales, and I'd show different things for different. All of them will show, I hope, a clear problem-solving approach without an ideological or a dogmatic commitment to one way of doing things.
Many of your projects are they are reinterpretations, or you have the enviable task of building a new version of something that's been built by legendary architects like Louis Kahn in one case, or Lutyens in another case. How easy is it to do that? Do you go into any great detail on how they approach the problem, or do you just look at what the issue is and go out and do it?
No, of course one looks at what they are. One approaches it respectfully, especially if you have a powerful context like the Central Vista, that you want to know all about what the architect was thinking at the time, how it has been done, what is its stylistic character, what's its architectural character. All of this one wants to look at. If it's IIM, I grew up in Ahmedabad, so I didn't have to, I didn't have to go afresh and think of what IIM's architecture was about. Gandhi Ashram, likewise. I mean, one has grown up with that. It's a part of our ethos here. I've been going to Gandhi Ashram since I was a kid. So fortunately, there too, there is something to hold on to. But yes, one has to study the context in which one is approaching the project, and that's how one gets to know what's right for the place.
2024, all the work on Central Vista will be done?
No, by no means. By no means will all of it be done. It's a large project. A lot of it would have started, but not all of it would have been finished. That is for sure.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Bimal. I think our viewers got some perspective of how you're approaching these projects. Like I told you, the first time you met, you're changing my city, right? And I'm hoping it's for the better, and I'm hoping it will be something that all of us can look at with pride. Thank you very much for spending time with us. Back to you, Sunetra.
Thank you.
A vision becomes a milestone when it helps make our lives richer with love and laughter. When it helps make a cleaner, smarter, and a more beautiful planet. So that you can set off on joyous new journeys and adventures. Building stronger bonds and bridging impossible distances, which take you from the ever new to the forever beautiful. Opening up vistas and windows to a vibrant new world. A vision becomes a milestone when it touches millions of lives. Aditya Birla Group. Big in your life.
We made a promise to be at the forefront of development, to power growth across the country, to set an example for cleanliness and create a land of opportunity. From bountiful reserves of minerals to steel that's strengthened by resolve, from untouched tribal cultures to undiscovered lands of old, we are many and we are one. We are Chhattisgarh.
We always wonder what lies beyond. What lies beyond conventions?
Hello, Blue Link. I'm feeling hot.
Blue Link, I'm feeling cold.
Beyond technology. Beyond innovations. Beyond mobility. Amazing things can happen when we go beyond. At Hyundai, we're going beyond mobility, and you're welcome to join us.
My parents. मेरे लिए ना कॉलेज चुना ना सब्जेक्ट्स, बट उनका प्लान था बहुत ही स्पेशल, जिससे बन गया मेरा फ्यूचर।
LIC का न्यू चिल्ड्रंस मनी बैक प्लान जो आपके बच्चों का फ्यूचर करे प्रोटेक्ट हर जरूरी मोड़ पर।
इट्स अ फ्यूचर बिल्डिंग प्लान। हाय माँ।
Luxury. In India, I discovered that true luxury isn't something you buy off a shelf. True luxury is a feeling that you are the Maharani of your world, and it can be all designed around you. All the beauty is yours. All the music is yours. India showed me that luxury doesn't follow designers and brands. True luxury follows its own heart.
Incredible India.
Welcome back. As we said at the beginning of the session, this is the first HT Summit that we're doing in a hybrid fashion. That's, of course, because across the world, everyone's trying to adapt to the new normal, new ways to interact, new ways of living. And just as we were celebrating the success of vaccines and the freedom it gives us, news of a new fast-spreading variant has again threatened to disrupt our life. This week, we've seen countries ban flights from South Africa. Lockdowns are back again in Europe. and fears of a third wave with the Omicron variant, which is said to be much more transmissible. But are these fears valid? How should governments and policymakers take a call on schools, on flights, and on boosters? We can't wait to hear from our next newsmaker and speaker, Professor Akiko Iwasaki, who is at Yale University and researching these very questions from us. So let's hear from the professor who's in conversation with Sanchita Sharma. Sanchita, it's over to you.
Thank you so much, Sunetra. Thank you for joining us, Professor Iwasaki. You know, just as the world is opening up, we had a setback in the form of Omicron. So I want to ask you, what do we know about the virus? I know it's early days yet, and we still don't know enough. We are learning something every day. But if you could just give us a recap of what we know now.
So we don't know many things yet about this new variant, Omicron. First, we don't know how much more transmissible this variant is compared to other variants. We also don't know how virulent this variant is. We also don't know how well the vaccines will protect against this variant. So there's a lot that we don't know. What we do know is that this Omicron variant does have a lot of mutations, a lot more mutations than other variants that we've seen so far. So this really makes some of us feel cautious about this variant, because the more mutation in the spike protein, the more likely that it will escape the vaccine-induced immune responses.
The early data also indicates that chances of reinfection are high. So what do we know about that? Because if people get reinfected, will the disease be as severe as the infection, the first infection, or will it be milder? Do we know anything about that?
Yeah, again, it's very early days, and it's really hard to know how bad the reinfection is going to be. However, as I mentioned, because the Omicron has more than 30 mutations in the spike protein, it means that any pre-existing immune responses developed either by the vaccination or the infection or a combination thereof may be less effective in preventing infection and disease against the Omicron variant. So we need to be very vigilant, and we need to do whatever it takes to prevent this from spreading.
So several countries have already introduced restrictions, and you mentioned that vaccines will not be as effective. Also, several manufacturers have started working on vaccines to make them more effective against. So when can we get a new vaccine? And which platform is it likely to come from? Will it be mRNA or some other platform as well?
Right. So just let me state that what I said is that this Omicron variant may be more capable of escape from immunity. We don't know right now, for example, how well the existing vaccines prevent infection, how well the antibodies generated by the vaccines, current vaccines, block this virus. And to do this, we need to do assays, which people around the world are doing right now, to take the antibody from a vaccinated or infected person and testing against the variant with respect to neutralization. And those data will be forthcoming, I'm sure, in the next few days. However, as you say, Sanchita, the important thing is to prepare for the future. If it turns out to be that this variant is indeed evasive, what we need to do is to, develop new vaccines that are specifically encoding the spike of this particular variant. And to do that, many vaccine companies are already working on developing the specific spike protein that is found in the Omicron variant as vaccine. The mRNA platform is, very adaptable. So you can basically change the sequence of the mRNA and make a new vaccine fairly quickly. And so the idea is to do that and then hopefully use that as a booster vaccine.
So do you think testing will get impacted because of the S gene target failure?
Right. So this is why we need to be, again, sort of reconsidering different platforms of testing. So the rapid antigen test that you can do at home, those are based on the presence of nucleocapsid protein, which is found in the core of the virus. And that seemed to still work, even though there are some mutations in the nucleocapsid of the Omicron. The rapid antigen tests are still, detecting the Omicron variants. The PCR test that you're referring to, Sanchita, some of the PCR primers are against the spike region of the genome of SARS-CoV-2, which is dropping out because of all these mutations that are accumulating in that region. However, most PCR tests rely on more than just one part of the genome. So spike is one of them, but there's nucleocapsid, there are envelope and other targets that are included in the set of primers. So it's not that, we will fail to detect this variant altogether, because we do have these other targets which are still working.
So this is not the first variant of concern, and this won't be the last. We know it'll happen. So what is the way ahead for vaccines? Will we have more variant-specific vaccines in the future? Will mixing vaccines help? Will we need booster doses every year, every 6 months, every 3 months? So could you just elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first, the most important thing is to elevate the immune responses with the current vaccines, because that's what we have available today. So boosters are getting, of course, the full vaccination doses, as well as the booster doses, is going to be very important. Even if that turns out to be less effective against the Omicron, it will still provide us with some form of protection, particularly, hopefully, against severe disease. Mixing and matching is also a great idea because, many countries struggle to obtain enough vaccines to cover their population. And if some vaccine platforms are more readily available, then that's something that we can quickly implement. And mixing and matching is also great because it produces sort of hybrid immunity, which means that you generate not only more robust immunity as by mixing these platforms, but also potentially different kinds of immunity that involve T cells and antibodies and so on. But getting back to the question of, do we need boosters, every time there is a new variant, and how do we ever stop having to vaccinate, every so often? And that question is something that my lab and others in the field have been tackling. And one of the ways in which we can do this is to develop mucosal vaccines. The mucosal vaccines, instead of the intramuscular vaccines, will provide local protection against the virus, which is much more resilient against different mutations that's incurred by the virus. The reason for this is because mucosal immunity produces antibodies known as IgA. And IgA is secreted into the mucus. So it's not inside of us, it's already out there coating the lining of these mucosal surfaces. So the analogy would be like having guards placed outside the door of your home. Yes. That's the mucosal immunity versus guards placed inside the house, which is the systemic immunity that we can obtain by intramuscular immunization. So that's sort of the difference in approach. And I believe that mucosal vaccines will be resilient against whatever future variants and may even provide more long-term immunity.
Your lab is also working on mucosal vaccines. So when can we expect them? How long will it take to develop them? I'm sure there's several other labs working on it as well. So what's the delay? What's holding you up?
It is frustrating because in terms of basic science work, it's relatively straightforward what we need to do to make a mucosal vaccine. Basically, what we need to do is to create nasal vaccination to boost the current existing immunity. And at least in the mouse model, that works very well. And other labs have also shown other types of nasal vaccination strategies. So what's the delay? That's a good question. I think what has to happen is that some of these ideas have to be kind of tested in clinical trials. And then, once it's known to be safe and effective in inducing immune responses in the mucosa, then it really should be, implemented in countries especially where variants are on the rise.
But do we have candidates which are ready for clinical trials?
I'm sure people are working night and day for clinical trial prepared vaccines. I'm not sure which labs are ready to do this yet, but hopefully soon.
So going back to boosters again, is there an optimal period when you should take it for maximum protection? So suppose I've got my 2 doses of a vaccine. In India, we generally take AstraZeneca and Bharat Biotech. So when should you go for a booster for maximum protection?
Yes. So for in country like the U.S., the current the recommendation is to get it after 6 months of your second dose or of mRNA vaccine, or 2 months after the first dose of the J&J, which is a single dose vaccine. And so if you already have 2 doses of AstraZeneca, you could wait for 6 months to get the vaccine. But however, we know that the immunity is waning, and also the fact that these new variants are out there, it makes me wonder if the booster should be implemented even earlier than 6 months.
Wow. And how important is it to vaccinate children? Because that's an area several countries are not even looking at.
Right. I think it's very important that the children get the vaccines as well, not only to provide protection for themselves, because the infection in children are, for the most part, mild. However, there are some complications, like children can also get long COVID. Children can get multisystem inflammatory syndrome, which is quite severe and requires hospitalization. And there are many unknown consequences of getting COVID. So absolutely, children should get vaccinated. In addition, children can serve as vectors for transmission to other people. And so, we want to make sure that they also have the barrier for, conferring herd immunity and so on.
Right. So you're saying children should get vaccinated wherever vaccines are available. So you mentioned long COVID. So why does it happen? Do we have a better understanding of it? And does it affect men and women differently? Because we were talking about hair loss earlier. So people who've recovered for months and months, I'm told.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So long COVID is a serious problem that's happening in, 10 to 30% of the survivor, depending on what studies you look at, and how you define long COVID. I mean, there's still not a universal definition of long COVID. But I think the consensus is that it's symptoms that linger for more than 4 weeks to 8 weeks after you have the first symptoms from COVID. And it's also possible that asymptomatic infection can turn into long COVID after a certain time period. So it's not that mild infections are harmless. It could lead to long COVID. The other thing to emphasize is that there are at least 2 paths to getting long COVID. One is the severe hospitalized patients who are discharged from the hospital. This is a population that is much older and more male dominant. Male sex is a risk factor for severe and lethal COVID. So these types of severe COVID patients, once they're discharged from the hospital, they still have lingering issues for months after they're discharged. And that's sort of a large population, 50 to 70% of that population may be still having lingering symptoms for extended time period. Whereas the other way of getting long COVID is, like I said, with milder infection that doesn't require hospitalization. However, and this group is more dominated by women of middle age. And that kind of long COVID is seen after milder infection and even potentially asymptomatic infection. And yeah, there are over 200 symptoms reported for long COVID. Many of the typical ones are, fatigue, difficulty to remember things, brain fog, and a lot of neurologic symptoms, cardiovascular, muscular symptoms, lots of muscle ache, shortness of breath. I mean, it involves so many organs that we're learning on a daily basis. The other thing, hair loss, skin rash, this is also something that happens with long COVID. And we're currently trying to understand, what is the sex difference in the symptom manifestation of long COVID. And there are some sex differences in long COVID symptoms, as well as potentially the underlying disease mechanisms.
You've also, again, done seminal work related to how COVID manifests differently in men and women. So could you just elaborate on that? How does it affect men? How does it affect women? And why does it happen?
Right. So yeah, male sex, as I mentioned, is a risk factor for severe and lethal COVID. And it's also, age, as I mentioned, these are things that are highly interlinked. What we found was that the male patients have age-dependent decline in T cell activation, especially during the early phase of infection, compared to female patients, even into their 90s, are able to develop a fairly robust T cell response. And it turns out that the male patients who are found to have very little T cell activation ended up having more severe disease in the longitudinal studies. And it's also, in order to compensate for not having the right kind of responses, male patients, especially older ones, tend to develop inflammatory cytokines, which could cause cytokine storm and other sort of pathologic impact of these inflammatory responses. And so there's definitely sex differences in how we respond to the virus, and potentially how we recover from this infection, because like I said, the long COVID, especially in the mild cases, are more dominated in women. With respect to why and how they differ, that's something we're still investigating. There's definitely genetic differences. X chromosome encoded proteins are known to play an important role in the immune response, as well as potentially hormones, especially in the case of the long COVID, there may be some link to sex hormones there.
So there's several new drugs in the pipeline. Some of these can be taken at home, some are to be given at the hospital. So how will these be effective against new variants? And which ones do you think are the most promising?
Yeah, so there are
drugs, but therapies as well. Not just drugs, but therapies to treat COVID as well.
Yeah, so there are a couple of promising new antivirals on the horizon. One is the Merck's molnupiravir, which reduces the replication of the virus, and it reduces the risk of hospitalization and death among high-risk COVID patients by about 30%. There's also the Pfizer's antiviral pill, Paxlovid, which was found in a clinical trial to cut the risk of hospitalization and death by 89%. So that sounds very promising, and this drug could become available within weeks. There are also monoclonal antibodies, which can be given, typically administered intravenously in the U.S., and that has been found to reduce hospitalization death by 70% or more. So there are therapies like this out there. The important thing is these therapies have to be given early during the infection, because once you get to the late phase of the disease, it's no longer the virus that's causing the disease. It's more the immune hyperactivation that's causing the disease. So you got to catch the infection early for these antiviral measures to work. And it's a challenge, because we need to have the drugs and medication ready to go in the case of someone that develops COVID.
Several countries have already experienced waves, like India did early on this year. So, and there's some people who are talking about herd immunity. So, and now that a lot of people have also been vaccinated around the world. So do you think any country, any region can actually look at achieving herd immunity at this moment over the next 6 months? Is that possible at all? I mean, especially now that you have newer variants coming up.
Yeah, so the herd immunity, the target for the percentage of population that need to be vaccinated to confer herd immunity is changing because of the transmissibility of the variants that we're seeing. So, the ancestral lineage, we used to say, okay, we need to get 70% of the population vaccinated or immune because of infection history to confer herd immunity. But that became much higher with the emergence of Delta variant, which is so much more transmissible. And so, that needle keeps going up and up. Essentially, what we need to do is to, immunize as many people as possible around the globe in order to control the rapid transmission. In order to achieve herd immunity, it really does require a global effort on vaccination. And that number, the percentage that needs to be vaccinated in order to confer herd immunity for Omicron is not known yet because we don't know how transmissible it is yet. But it's something that we all need to play a part in trying to achieve.
Omicron has been called a variant of concern at a time when the flu season is about to start in the Northern Hemisphere. This is the start of the holiday season in the West. It's the start of the wedding season in India, which I told you some 300, 500 people attend every wedding ceremony. So do you think that we could have a fourth wave very quickly? And if that happens, is it likely to be worse than the third waves in several countries that occurred earlier this year?
Yeah, I really, really hope the Omicron would not lead to the fourth wave. But right now, as I said, we don't know so many things about this variant that it's hard to say. I think it's even without the Omicron, though, there are countries like the US, which we still have lots of infection happening on a daily basis with the Delta variant. We shouldn't forget the Delta variant. It's still extremely transmissible and are causing lots of, hospitalization, especially in the unvaccinated population. So, and having, indoor gathering in the wintertime with poorly ventilated spaces is really, a cause for concern. That's where lots of transmissions are likely to happen. So we really need to be vigilant about keep getting the vaccine, getting the booster, masking, and making sure that the buildings are safe, ventilated, and properly humidified. So there's a lot of things to think about going forward. And I still think it's really too early to be relaxing any measures for public health containment of this virus.
But now that we know the things that protect us against infection, do you think the worst is behind us in your view? This is a question I've got in our fight against COVID, or are there bigger challenges ahead? And are there ways that we can combat the challenges ahead better? I mean, what could we have done differently if COVID or something similar was to have been identified now? What were the things we did right? What were the things we did wrong?
Yeah, there are lots of lessons to be learned from this pandemic. For example, mask wearing in the beginning was not encouraged, and that sort of led people to become doubtful of the usefulness and benefit of the masks themselves. And so, we all know now that masks do help prevent transmission, and this virus is airborne. So, messaging and sort of implementation of these kinds of measures were a little bit less than desirable in the beginning. I'm hoping that the entire sort of world is now learning better and better how to cope with this virus. And the fact that we do have really amazingly effective vaccines now available in many countries, not all countries. I realize that the global distribution is still far from, ideal. We do need to take advantage of whatever measures we have to try to prevent further spread of the virus. And then, of course, there are lots of hesitancies around the new types of platforms of vaccines, like the mRNA vaccine or the antiviral vector vaccines. However, with so many hundreds of millions of people getting these vaccines and having a safety profile being confirmed, I think we should feel very confident in taking the vaccines, getting the vaccines and the booster, and potentially mixing different kinds of platforms to get to the place where everyone can be vaccinated.
Some countries are considering mandatory vaccinations. Do you think that should be done?
Yeah, mandatory vaccinations are very important to contain the virus, because especially in places where infection is really spreading, and especially in professions like the healthcare providers and workers that are in contact with many people, these are the people who really do need to be vaccinated, and so there are mandates like this around, and I support it, because we just have to be sure to ensure the safety of people around them as well as themselves, obviously, from getting the virus and getting consequences like long COVID, which is really debilitating. And so mandates do make sense to me as an immunologist.
So you haven't answered my question. Is the worst behind us in your view, or do we have bigger challenges?
Yeah, I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm hoping that the worst is behind us. The worst can be behind us if we vaccinate, enough people. The worst is yet to come if we don't vaccinate the globe, because there may be more transmissible and or more virulent variant that can emerge. And who is to say that that will not cause a bigger wave and more devastating impact? However, the fact that there are many countries that have, a significant portion of their population vaccinated makes me feel that the worst may be over, and that what we need to do is kind of put more pressure on making sure that those unvaccinated people are also vaccinated.
What would you choose, boosters or in countries, or would you prefer sending the vaccines to other countries who don't have access?
Oh, well,
what should the world choose?
The world, yeah. If I had all the supplies of vaccines in my hand, I would send it.
But we don't. So in a realistic situation, what should it be?
Yeah, well, in countries like the US, we have ample vaccines, and we are sending vaccines to different parts of the world, but that's still not enough to cover the entire world. And so I think the countries that have plenty of vaccines should keep sending vaccines to the areas of the world that don't have enough vaccines. Absolutely.
If you have to choose between the two, boosters and sharing vaccines?
Yeah, so right now that choice isn't really a fair thing to think about, because in order to distribute the vaccine, there is more than just sort of having the right kind of having enough doses, but having the infrastructure to be able to transport the vaccine. And for example, the mRNA vaccines have to be transported at very low temperatures, having the infrastructure to store those vaccines and then distribute it within those countries. So it's not as simple as like, if I don't get a booster, somebody else will get the vaccine elsewhere. So I think that's just not a very fair question.
Well, I had to try. So you've been at the forefront of sharing scientific, evidence-based information with people. And this is something new which has happened, during the pandemic, where scientists have actually come out and spoken up against the misinformation and guided people on, nudged people to make the right choices. So how do you think the pandemic's actually changed the way you look at science, your career over the last couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely. I was always very much, into science communication prior to the pandemic. But my circle was quite small. It was mostly other scientists or people with certain diseases that are interested in my work. But with the pandemic and with my engagement of the public through Twitter and YouTube and other platforms, I think my role has shifted quite a bit from just sort of talking to my close colleagues to talking to the world like I'm doing right now, globally and trying to dispel some of the misinformation, which was quite toxic. It still is quite toxic because people become very hesitant to get the vaccine because of this misinformation. And so my role as a communicator has definitely expanded. And I plan to keep doing this because I think it's important for not just scientists, but women of color to speak. There are, most people's idea of scientists, is kind of skewed towards one kind of group, and it's not true. There are scientists of all colors and all different types of backgrounds. So I think for that reason also, it's important for scientists like myself to be out there.
In fact, you're a big champion of women in science and women in STEM. So how did you, did you face challenges when you started work in the area of immunology? Was something personal? What made you choose science? Or was it just because you looked around and you just saw, white men, white Caucasians, and you said, let me change it a bit?
Yeah, I didn't choose science because of the disproportionate sort of demographic, but science is something that I absolutely love doing. I can't think of any other profession that allows a person to pursue a really interesting question that's relevant to human health and discover something fundamental that's useful to the population, the people. And so it's extremely rewarding. It's also very difficult and challenging, especially because there is still some definitely implicit bias against women and people of color. However, we are making some progress, and that's unfortunately been kind of reversed during the pandemic because women had to spend more time at home and doing other things to take care of the family. However, I'm just hoping that in the future, this will again be, there will be progress for women in science.
I have a question which says that even 2 years after COVID, it seems that medical science is still chasing the virus. And, there are always new challenges that we need to face. So they want to know that if we can't prevent mutations or transmission of the virus, can we at least conceive of a time when you can predict the next form the virus may take or where it is likely to emerge? And this is just going to help us better arm ourselves. Is that possible at all? Can you identify regions where you can get mutations from?
Yeah, certainly. Global genome surveillance effort is important because we don't know where the new variant will come from. As the world becomes more and more vaccinated, the new variants are likely to emerge from regions that are under-vaccinated because we still need transmission of the virus to develop mutants. The other kind of things we need to worry about is to protect the immunocompromised, because immunocompromised patients also can have very long-term infection, sometimes months, which can aid in the accumulation of these mutations to happen. And so, we really do need to implement monoclonal antibodies and antivirals to protect people who can't develop their immune responses.
So what is the new normal likely to be? What would you want to say to people? What should we prepare ourselves for?
Yeah, we all want this pandemic to be over, but in order to get there, no, it's not. I think the countries were very quick to relax measures based on the Delta variant, and I'm hoping that this Omicron variant will not be more transmissible, because that's where we really do need to step up in terms of bringing back some of the measures that that are needed to contain the virus. But the new normal can be achieved sooner if we get vaccinated, boosted, and do the right thing, and wearing a mask and things like this. And we need to learn to live with this virus just kind of, with humility. We don't know when the new variants will arise, and we can't be kind of confident in saying that the pandemic is over or a pandemic is declining, because we just don't know. We really do need to acquire immunity against this virus, and like I said, new platforms of vaccines might help to contain further mutants from infecting people.
As a scientist at a time like this, do you recommend people just follow COVID-appropriate behaviors themselves, mask up, wash their hands, watch their distance, ventilate, vaccinate, and all of that? Or are you in favor of things like lockdowns, which have a huge impact on, the informal sector and developing countries where people can't step out and earn money? So as a scientist, what would you recommend, especially when you have new variants of concern that you need to worry about?
Yeah, I think we do need to avoid at all costs having to lock down, entirely, because as you say, the economic impact is so huge. And the fact that many of us are vaccinated and boosted, we probably don't have to go to that length. However, in countries where there are no vaccines, that's a different story, because we're still at the very beginning of the pandemic with respect to what we need to do to contain the virus in those countries. And lockdown may be required if there are no vaccines available or people are not getting vaccinated due to hesitancy.
So I know you don't have a crystal ball, but let's say a year from now, if we were to have this conversation again, what would you expect? Would we be still wearing masks? Would we be still washing hands and watching our distance? I would assume we're all, vaccination coverage would have gone up. So where do you see the world a year from now?
Yeah, I really hope that the world a year from now, it will be a different place. Vaccines are really key to getting to that place. And hopefully, if enough people are vaccinated and the variants are contained, we should be able to have a much more normal life as we knew it. However, I was asked this question exactly a year ago, and I said the pandemic will be over by now, and I was wrong. So I really don't want to predict once more in the wrong direction.
So thank you for the session. Thank you so much. I'm handing over to Sunetra. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to the professor for providing us clarity on an issue which is something that we're all tracking so closely. And as the professor pointed out, there is still so much to learn about this new variant, but it's good to have an expert's opinion and clarity on so many other things. Well, that's it for day one of Hindustan Times Leadership Summit. Don't forget that we're going to have such great speakers every day till Saturday, which is the last day of the summit. And if you wanted something to look forward to tomorrow, well, coming up tomorrow is a session with India's 2 Olympians. We have Abhinav Bindra and Neeraj Chopra. So stay tuned for that. It's goodbye for today. And tomorrow we see you again at 5 o'clock. Don't forget to log in and watch those sessions.
A vision becomes a milestone when it helps make our lives richer with love and laughter. When it helps make a cleaner, smarter, and a more beautiful planet. So that you can set off on joyous new journeys and adventures. Building stronger bonds and bridging impossible distances, which take you from the ever new to the forever beautiful. Opening up vistas and windows to a vibrant new world. A vision becomes a milestone when it touches millions of lives. Aditya Birla Group. Big in your life.
We made a promise to be at the forefront of development, to power growth across the country, to set an example for cleanliness and create a land of opportunity. From bountiful reserves of minerals to steel that's strengthened by resolve, from untouched tribal cultures to undiscovered lands abroad, we are many and we are one. We are Chhattisgarh.
We always wonder what lies beyond. What lies beyond conventions?
Hello, Blue Link. I'm feeling hot.
Blue Link, I'm feeling cold.
Beyond technology. Beyond innovations. Beyond mobility. Amazing things can happen when we go beyond. At Hyundai, we're going beyond mobility, and you're welcome to join us.
My parents. मेरे लिए ना कॉलेज चुना ना सब्जेक्ट्स, बट उनका प्लान था बहुत ही स्पेशल, जिससे बन गया मेरा फ्यूचर।
LIC का न्यू चिल्ड्रंस मनी बैक प्लान जो आपके बच्चों का फ्यूचर करे प्रोटेक्ट हर जरूरी मोड़ पर।
इट्स अ फ्यूचर बिल्डिंग प्लान।
Hi, Ma.
Luxury. In India, I discovered that true luxury isn't something you buy off a shelf. True luxury is a feeling that you are the Maharani of your world, and it can be all designed around you. All the beauty is yours. All the music is yours. India showed me that luxury doesn't follow designers and brands. True luxury follows its own heart.
Incredible in